Bienvenidos, worldwide fans of the planet's hottest entertainment with an edge. Jaime En Fuego here, welcoming you to my namesake program, Enfuegotainment. Damn Rizal, another fresca fuego review, at least a little fresh coming from me. This is a film that came out in 2019, and it got some buzz from a lot of different just genre, websites and stuff like that, because it's like sci-fi, but more so drama in my estimation. This is not a horror movie at all, although some of the sites like Bloody covered it and a few others. But this is from the UK lead singer and songwriter from a band called Ghostlight. This is his feature, written, composed, and directorial debut called Starfish, and it stars none other than Virginia Gadsden, I believe? Boy, it's Gadsden Garden or something like that. I feel terrible now, but I recognized her immediately because I had seen her in a film that I was really impressed with, because it just kind of took me off guard due to low expectations, and that was a film called Monster Party that I saw last year. And she also had a smaller role in the most recent Halloween movie, the one that Danny McBride and Green did and such. And yeah, man, she's a talented actress, and this is definitely one where she gets to flex some emotional muscles, because she's pretty much the only character in this entire movie. So the film essentially starts out with her at the funeral of her best friend. Find out very quickly that she's a radio disc jockey, and she's apparently been doing it for a while, because there's a few people who actually recognize her at the funeral, and they were unaware that she was even friends with the girl who had recently passed. And I mean, being a younger woman and her friend also being younger, you have to figure that this was a little more on the sad, unexpected, catastrophic kind of side. And the thing is, right after the funeral, she decides to break into her best friend's house, and immediately we find out the world has pretty much ended. And so not even in your typical like everything seems so dystopian and destroyed. It's really almost like the Rapture or some shit, man. It's like everybody is gone, although she is getting a radio transmission a couple points early on in the film from this other man who doesn't really identify himself or give much information, aside from the fact that he claims to have been friends with Virginia's best friend, like they were acquainted at least. And yeah, they were apparently working on some kind of psychedelic, head trippy sort of stuff about hidden signals and opening gateways and things of that nature. I mean, there is not even so much, there's like an otherworldly aspect to it. Like there is indications just a very couple times in the film that there is like some sort of kind of creature, alien-esque, and other dimensional, whatever, otherworldly kind of thing. But the movie is not about that, and that's why I'm covering it here on Enfuegotainment as opposed to trying to push it. This is the kind of super slow as sludge, just art house indie stuff with just the tiniest sprinkling of edge, I guess, that most of my co-hosts on the horror show would probably despise this film. It's really a lot of this girl just sitting around, and Virginia's character just getting lost in herself in the course of grieving, in the course of finding all these different mixtapes that her friend has labeled as this is the mixtape that will save the world and so on. So I mean, there's big grand ideas in this, in this dramatic film with some sci-fi sprinkling in and stuff like that, but really it's more so just of the borderline experimental and psychedelic side of things. And Virginia emotes tremendously throughout this movie, but you can tell that she has a lot of guilt on her conscience, as we find out as the film is actually going on. Not being there for her friend in the course of what, it's mild spoiler, but we do find out that this was kind of a terminal thing, or at least they were kind of thinking it was. And there's one conversation when more tests and so on and so forth, and how she's like, I wasn't there for my friend when she was going through this declining health the way that I should have been. So that's one thing. And then we also get some just hints about some relational issues, possible infidelity. We're not really sure. And that's the thing. There's a lot that you're not really sure about in this film. It is such a head trip. And I mean, there's times where she's listening to these songs and she's transported to all of these different landscapes, but The predominance of the film takes place and was filmed in this snowy area of Colorado. I guess the rest of it was filmed in LA from what I was reading on the IMDb and stuff. But yeah, it definitely looks like frozen-ass Colorado, man. And, you know, she takes, like, some of the iconic images that have gone on, like, throughout the internet about this is her basically, like, taking down some of this, like, animal skin stuff, and she's actually, like, wearing it as a coat and as a hat and stuff, and it's a really dope look, man, and stuff. But I mean, it's very scant on dialogue. It is much more so driven by just the emotiveness, by the music throughout that AT does, and if he's got his own band, you know, and it's like any shred of success, you know, I'm not sure how big Ghostlight is over in the UK and stuff, but I mean, whether picking other songs like this track that I couldn't even, I know I've heard it before, it's from a hip-hop kind of trip-hop group, I guess you could say, called Why with a question mark, and I'm paraphrasing the line, but it was the one that immediately stuck in my head because I recognized the dude's weird-ass voice, but it was when he came to the line that's like, you know, no matter how long it's been since we've talked, you know, something to the effect of your funeral is one that, you know, I'd, you know, fly anywhere to be at, or something to that effect. Sorry guys who are gonna crucify me in some brutal fashion for paraphrasing, you know, that lyric, but it's really powerful, and it most definitely, it just is synonymous with the type of mourning that our character that Virginia plays is going through the entirety of this film. And I mean, there's more raucous, upbeat, like kind of indie rock type stuff, and then there's also very just sad, somber work with, you know, piano and like different synthy type stuff and whatnot. Score's great. I was really impressed with it. I could definitely see the fact that since there is not as much resolution perhaps to certain questions that are proposed here as some people may like, that would probably be, as I've sung the praises in so much bueno about this, you know, on the Rapido reviews, I don't go into in-depth stuff about each of those little aspects, but if I was to say Malo or something that I would presume someone who's not so into this sort of filmmaking would point to as even a fail on Ugly, is that, you know, a lot of those questions they're not like spoon-fed to you. There's a lot to interpret about this film. There's even a particular very meta moment that I kind of found it out of place, but I guess with like just the head trip that this film really is, with so much recollection, so much almost like astral projection jumping, so to speak, going down. I mean, there's even a little animated interlude. This film is just all over the place, and maybe that lack of cohesion might be off-putting to some. I found it a real breath of fresh air. I didn't love this movie, but I found it very fascinating, especially from a filmmaking standpoint. Yes, perhaps it was just a first-time filmmaker wanting to be like, okay, I'm gonna just jam all of the different crazy ideas from, let's have like, you know, maybe a tiny bit of horror in there, but let's have this head-tripping sci-fi stuff, but let's also have lots of dramatic stuff. And it doesn't always work, but it still was really in a lot of ways unlike anything that I've ever seen before, you know. I will definitely give it that. And a lot of the ideas, whether just proposed or actually some of the stuff that does get confirmed, and even the stuff that you think is confirmed, I was thinking a lot about this film afterwards. It's not similar to a film that I recently reviewed called The Wave in tone at all, but it's one of these like mind-fugger kind of films that afterwards I kept thinking about it, and I kept really wondering, should I rewatch this, because then maybe I could get some additional questions answered that I still have and that I'm still pondering. But I guess that's a good thing. If you get done with a film and you're like, I really feel like I need to watch that again, that is definitely a serious stamp of approval, and that's why I will contend that this is a bueno movie. And if you're stuck in isolation, self-quarantine, you know, whatever, or you're just, you know, only heading out here and there for like TP and, you know, to get groceries occasionally or whatever, I mean, it's on Hulu, and it's only around 100 minutes, and I mean, once again, score is great, performance is great, story is definitely a little more of the trip-tastic variety, and a little less, I guess, linear than a lot of people might necessarily desire. But as somebody who appreciates this sort of art house approach, I dug this movie. I genuinely did. So yeah, bueno, 3. out of 5 for Starfish, and I'm assuming the Starfish reference is, you know, her friend has this fish tank, but it's filled with some starfish and with some other aquatic creatures and stuff, and I know it's got to be some sort of, you know, allegorical, you know, euphemism, symbolic in some way, shape, or form, and that's where, I mean, was Virginia's character representative of, you know, a starfish, you know, being taken out of water and eventually drying up and dying, you know, because she is foraging and looking for food and looking for other people, and this is where I'm just dancing around, not trying to spoil stuff, but there is some definite ambiguity to this movie that some people would find off-putting, but I like those sort of things that I can turn over in my head, and I might even, you know, show it to, you know, my lady or some friends or whatever, whenever, you know, some of us can actually, you know, get closer. But once again, it's on Hulu, so if this kind of, you know, head trip, very well scored and very well acted film is seemingly up your alley, if you're a fan of sci-fi, if you're a fan of just solid, dramatic, you know, performances, it has both of those in spades for sure. So, I've been Jaime En Fuego. Y'all can find moi on all social media sectors like Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, obviously here on YouTube. It's been primarily smaller indie films that I didn't get the chance to see in the last year or so. I've been either VODing or I've been seeking out on various streaming services. I most recently put up a review for Little Joe, Greener Grass, also VOD'd Vivarium, the aforementioned The Wave 2020 with Justin Long. Lots of Star Wars coverage has always kind of been my thing since I relaunched this channel at the beginning of 2019 after giving it a break for a couple years there. But yeah, I have lots of cool stuff depending on what you're into. Unfortunately, with the big blockbusters on hold, which is what I used to primarily specialize in on this channel, this is what y'all going to get. The stuff that actually interests me beyond the big and just, you know, bravado of spectacle like we get from Hollywood all too often. But if you like stuff that's actual horror, like real horror movies, serious, spectacular shizzle, you have to go over to youtube.com/The Horror Show channel. That's where you can find myself, the showrunner over there, Cecil Laird, Susie von Slaughter, Robert Deuel, Marsha Parker, and we do at least an episode every day, just like I do here on my own channel, but over there it's a much larger variety, because sometimes it could be a trailer reaction, sometimes it could be, on Saturdays I do a Stephen King show that's always about one of his books or films or a countdown or something like that. Obviously, film reviews, there's unboxings, there's video game Let's Plays. It's definitely a horror variety show, which is what we have always in the near 6 years that we have been doing this. Yeah, just tried to just maintain and aspire towards. So that's a thing. And lastly, I occasionally moonlight, or at least I was a regular cast member, and now we don't even really know what's going on with it. But stay tuned to my social media and also that of Willis Screedia, the Willis Screedia YouTube channel. He's got all kinds of awesome original content that he does over there, Mr. CP, my dude. But on Mondays, it used to be every Monday, and now that's the thing. It's like we moonlight together to do this here and there when there's enough like stories to talk about. You know, we used to do weekend box office, but the box office in Hollywood is pretty much on hold, just like the theater industry is, and so that's a bummer. But yeah, just stay tuned to my social media or CP's, and that's where, yes, show business on Mondays, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific when we do it. Myself, CP, Lindsay Mimsy from My Two Cents of Nonsense, and Chauncey K. Robinson. We always have a blast when we do get the chance to get together, but as everybody knows, the world is very weird, but this is definitely, Starfish is definitely, as far as a film about isolation and just trying to come to terms with it and maintain your sanity, and yet with great music and with great composure, and Virginia's beautiful too, so that definitely helps. But I mean, aside from all of that, yeah, I mean, it was a very interesting film, and I do once again recommend it. So I've been Fuego, y'all have been Rad Status, and until the reel of Ka comes around once more, hasta luego, Cinemigos! But I'm hopeful that we get to share more of this palaver sooner rather than later, and until then, stay indoors, stay safe, watch movies.